Hey everyone, how you doing? Welcome to the channel. It's review time today and we're going sci-fi with a look at The Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey. So The Mercy of Gods is book one of The Captives War. It's the new offering from the author duo who write as James S.A. Corey and most people are familiar with for their work on the Expanse series. That was a 9-book sci-fi series that was adapted into a successful TV show, and for the most part I enjoyed both the books and the show. The Mercy of the Gods is kind of in a similar vein. It's another space opera, but it's got a very different setting, a very different feeling, a vibe, and a very different bunch of characters. So we start this one out on kind of an Earth-like planet. It seems to be in a very similar level of technological advancement. We don't see a vast amount of the world. We mostly see kind of indoor environments. Basically we see laboratories and we see offices and things like that, so we don't get to explore this particular world. We see a few of the technological advancements that does set it aside from Earth, and there are bits that are hinted at in terms of the kind of the history of the planet and the origin of species as well, which shows us that it's not just kind of a carbon copy of Earth in a far future environment. Basically, things happen relatively quickly in this one. It's a story about first contact, and we have a bunch of characters who are taken away by alien invaders, and these are all people who are at the top of their game, and obviously a bunch of those are characters that we'd already followed for the first few chapters, getting to know them before things escalate. Once the characters are taken away, obviously everything changes. We get a few different settings, a few different environments, and it's a very strange and, well, alien experience, I guess, because they are no longer in their own familiar territory. They are experiencing things for the first time, and obviously we're going along for the ride with them. And it's kind of reminiscent for me of an Adrian Tchaikovsky story, because you have all of these alien creatures and alien environments, and they're all very, very different. You know, they're not the little green man kind of aliens. I like that because that's probably not what I would expect. You've got all of these different weird and wonderful animals on Earth. Why wouldn't they be even more weird and wonderful if they're coming from another planet? So we kind of explore that a bit here through the story. But whilst we're there, we're mostly dealing with, I guess, kind of the formation of an underground rebellion, because obviously the title of the series is The Captives War. The characters we follow are, for the most part in this story, for the majority of the book, captives, and they're going to be starting a war. They don't want to be captives, they want to be free, they want to survive, and to do so without having the foot of the enemy on their necks. So I thought there were some interesting elements, and because I've touched on one of them just there, I'll start off with the alien kind of civilizations that you get here, and how I really did enjoy them. It's one of the things that sets a story like this one apart. I love the imagination that you get there. Not only is it the different types, the different class, I guess, of aliens that have captured our characters, there are other alien civilizations that have been captured as well, and the synopsis of the story tells almost of a competition, and we do see that through the books. You've got a kind of research competition, essentially, and you've got different civilizations, different groups of captives from different planets, who are all, unknowingly, at first at least, in competition against each other. And it's very weird because on the one side, it does allow us to see different types of aliens, and on the other side, I don't know what's going on really, and the characters don't know what's going on, which is why I guess I don't know what's going on, because I'm seeing it through their perspective. But I like how we get to explore all of these different alien creatures, and you've got the real kind of nitty gritty of it. It's not just what do they look like and how do they treat our human characters. You get things like dissection, so you can actually look literally inside an alien and see kind of, I guess, what makes them tick, see how they breathe, how they survive, how they digest things, and so forth. And I like that. I thought it was really interesting because it shows a bit of a level of understanding as well as imagination, rather than just having generic aliens, basically. So that was a really good thing. And we get other things like aliens who eat their dead, kind of copying some of the traits that you'll have from various creatures on Earth. But of course, it's a very different kind of civilization to what we have as humans, and therefore a lot of us won't be used to that kind of thing, and it will, I guess, literally feel alien. So that was a good part of it. Some of the characters I thought were really good as well, but there were other characters who I didn't like so much. And I think this is one of my main failings with the book. There were a couple, but I thought there were too many characters who we see as point of view. So some of them don't really get a lot of screen time, or screen time that we see through their eyes, if you like. And it doesn't allow me, or it didn't allow me the time to kind of really get to know those characters other than secondhand from one of our other point of view characters. And that was kind of a letdown for me. Now, there is a story element that I won't describe for spoiler purposes, but there's a story element that kind of puts us in the head, I guess, of a couple of different characters for a very short period of time. And I've seen this before, and it's not something that really works for me. And it does contribute to a bit of a jumping around of characters and introducing us to the viewpoint of maybe a few more characters than we might normally see. Now, one of the writing elements that I didn't like about this actually ties in with some of that character work. And again, it's a bit like, I'll use another Adrian Tchaikovsky example. In Children of Ruin, there's a kind of hive mind mentality, and it's a very weird, because it's alien, I guess, it's a very weird kind of point of view to be in, because they don't have the same thought processes as a human, and so the dialogue, if you were to call it that, was very weird and really didn't work for me. We've got a similar hive mind in The Mercy of Gods, and a couple of the point of view chapters that we get are from the point of view of what's called the Swarm. And it's another one that just really didn't work for me. It was better than Children of Ruin because you didn't have this kind of slippery slope of the language getting a little bit slightly crazier, I guess, a little bit more insane sounding as time went on. There wasn't, first of all, enough time for that here with the Swarm, but they were also very much more human in the way that they thought, and there are reasons for that. But it was done in a better way than I found the hive mind mentality, whatever it was, can't remember the name of it, in Children of Ruin. But here, the Swarm just didn't work for me. It's a device that I don't really get on with, basically. I can't really put my finger on it, but it's just something that doesn't quite work for me. The other storytelling technique here that I didn't like, that just did not work for me, was there was a couple of areas where there was a small time jump, essentially, and we saw everything that happened, or the key things that happened during that time jump, we had summarised, and it was almost like a news bulletin. So the first part of this was an area that I was really I guess excited in. One of the things that I would have really liked to see more, which was around the first contact and the taking of these captives, the defeat of the Earth-like planet. And we didn't see that at all, really. It was more a case of, as I say, news bulletins, just summarising. It took, I think it was 5 days to subjugate this planet, and it told about the defensive missile attacks and the way that they were quickly and effectively dealt with, and things like that. And we didn't actually see any of that as narrative. It was just very short, almost bullet points as they were discussed. There was another bit later on which was very similar, and it basically just said, in this conflict they lost that number of kind of their army. In that conflict it was this number. In these other conflicts it was this number, this number, this number. And it was just weird. It didn't work for me. I felt detached from the story when we had those things come up, because it just, well, it disrupted the flow, first of all, but also it felt very weak to me. It didn't match the rest of the storytelling that we had for the rest of the novel. So I said I'd read the Expanse series of books by this author, and some of them were really good for me, and some of them not so good for me. And I would say for The Mercy of Gods, it kind of fell in line with the not so good part of the Expanse rather than the really good part. It didn't quite do everything that I wanted it to do, and one of those things, of course, is suck me in, get me really invested in it, and wanting to go out and get the second book when it comes out. That's not the case here, so it's one that I'm probably not, unless things change, I'm probably not going to read the next book in the series, because I didn't really get too much out of this one. It wasn't one that I enjoyed nearly as much as I wanted to, and nearly as much as I thought I was going to. I did feel kind of let down by the synopsis. It didn't really do the best of jobs, I don't think, at describing what the story was going to be like. One of those things was that I was expecting a largely single person narrative. Dafydd is the only character who's really mentioned in the synopsis, and we're following him as he's going to be this grand kind of champion of humanity, and that might be the story over the course of the series, but we don't really get that through this first book. We only get the initial, I guess, seeds of it, but we see a lot more people, so it's almost that I wouldn't even call Dafydd the main character of the book. He's on there kind of on a par with a couple of others, so it was a bit disappointing. It wasn't quite what I was expecting, quite what I was looking for when I picked this book up. And in the end, I only gave it 3.5 stars, and it was a low 3.5 stars. It wasn't quite 3, but it wasn't too far off. So as far as my weighted ratings go, we move on first of all to the enjoyment, and because my enjoyment of it wasn't nearly as good as it could have been, I only ended up with 15 out of 20 for this. The world building was kind of hit and miss. I gave it 16 out of 20. I could maybe have gone a little bit higher actually, because there were some really interesting elements. I said about the kind of looking at the physiology of the aliens and the different alien species from different planets that you've got. I really did enjoy that, but we don't really get too much outside of that, beyond a little bit of planetary world building, which as I said earlier on was very minimal, because we don't see too much outside in the kind of the outside world. So the world building was 16. The characters I gave 15 out of 20. This one was another hit and miss for me, because we didn't spend enough time with some of the characters to really get to know them, and some of the characters who I did like were among that category. The ones that we did spend a lot more time with, I did generally enjoy. So I thought the character of Dafydd, for instance, was quite an interesting one, and some of the people around him as well, but it was very much a mixed bag overall. For the plot, I went with 14 out of 20, because for the most part, I was reading this with my friend Nina, and we both said at this kind of a similar portion of the book, I don't really understand why they're doing this. I don't get what the point is, basically, in what they're doing. And it wasn't really explained, I don't think, that well, but it was a major part of the storyline, and it meant that for me, the story didn't kind of move forward too much for a big chunk. It just felt like a lot was happening, but it wasn't really happening for anything or in the advancement of the plot of the overall story. So a bit of a disappointment there. The writing style I gave 7 out of 10. It was mostly good. I like the overall writing style. It's just those couple of bits that I didn't like, where we broke up the story to kind of summarise what happens over a time jump. That's probably the main thing that I have to say as a bad thing about the writing style for me in this particular book. Pacing, I went with 3. It was pretty evenly paced. It's just a little bit too slow for me. So if you're looking for something that's got a good balance of pacing, that's not jumping around and speeding up and slowing down at different points, this definitely works well in that respect. It's just for me, I wanted a bit more from it. I wanted a bit more action, a bit more intensity, and I didn't really get that too much. And then finally, the discretionary section. I've given 1 out of 5 for this. I don't really have too much to say about it, basically. There isn't anything that really stood out and made me want to give it anything more than that. So in total, The Mercy of Gods by James S.A. scores 71% in my weighted ratings, which puts it at equal 214th in my Hall of Fame. So this is one that didn't really work for me too much. It was an okay book, but I wouldn't really go too much beyond that. I wouldn't say I overly enjoyed it, but I definitely didn't dislike it either. So a very much middle of the road experience for me. I've got plenty of friends who've read this and really enjoyed it though. If you've read this one, whether you agree or disagree with how I found it, let me know in the comments down below. I'd be interested to hear your viewpoints. That's everything for me today though. I hope to see you in the next video sometime soon. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, read some good books. Bye for now.